All right, let's call Public Safety Committee to order. First rule is call to order and roll call. I think Councilmember Cotton and myself are here. Councilmember Watton has asked to be excused tonight. We have staff members and mayor at this time. Please note anyone I missed in that. Do move to excuse Councilmember Watton Watton for tonight.
I do.
All right, Councilmember Watton is excused for tonight. Let's look at the agenda. Um, should we go ahead and approve the agenda as submitted? I have no changes desired.
Looks good.
Looks good. All right, well, we will proceed forward with the agenda. Anybody wishing to make public comments for the committee? I don't see anybody tonight, so we will close public comments and we'll move on to approval of minutes dated March 16th, 2026. Chair has no questions or revisions regards to the minutes. Are you okay?
No concern.
You okay with them as presented?
Yes.
All right, we will accept the minutes as presented and move on with the rest of the agenda. All right, we have no agenda bills tonight, so with that, we will move into flood event review update. My talking part's about done.
All right, guess I'm up. Presentation going. There we go. Okay, so just wanted the opportunity to provide the council with some steps that we've taken since the flood event. Just to go briefly what the city's done since then. So first of all, as you know, the event occurred on December 10th, 2025. At one point, we had 70,000 CFS going through the city. That's usually how we judge the severity, amount of cubic feet per second of water going over the falls. Most of the water was contained between 202 and the river. There were some areas in the city backing up on Kimball Creek. But for the majority, most of the water was seen between 202 and the river. It wasn't a widespread event completely covering the city as we've had in the past. Besides the water, we also had some challenges with some transportation issues. As you know, I-90 was closed. A lot of traffic got directed through the city for a day or so, causing some challenges. And then it was a multi-unit response. Besides internally having police, fire, public works, and administration staff involved, we also had outside agencies, East Side Fire and Rescue, Falls City Fire, as well as Washington State Patrol and DOT were all kind of involved different times throughout the day, helping mitigate the situation. So what did we do after the event? We wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity for the city to hear what happened, how we responded, and then to get their feedback. So the method we used was a town hall, which was scheduled for March 4th. For those of you that weren't there that night, just to briefly go over what happened, it was an opportunity for the city to share what we saw, as well as to get feedback from the citizens about what they saw, what we could improve on. So we started the night with, and it was held at the high school. We started the night with Public Works, PD, and Fire, giving a prepared presentation really that talked about the events before things that we did before the flood, during the flood, and then how we responded after the flood. And then more importantly, we gave the citizens an opportunity to react to what they saw. And so what we did is after our presentation, we broke them into different groups in front of easels, and we asked them two discussion points. We asked them to talk about it amongst their group, write down on the easel what they came up with to answer these two questions, which was really, what did you see during the flood that went correctly, that went good, and then what you saw where we could consider some improvements. So that's what the public talked about. And then afterwards, there was a little bit of time where they could present one or two ideas, but really the big thing is we took those easels, collected all the information, and put it together for staff to be able to review and go over and look for ways that we could follow up and actions that we needed to take that were appropriate. So just on a graphic here, just to show you, just to summarize, so we had the flood in December. The internal department's assessments kind of happened in January and February. We had the town hall in March, and then where we're going is what we're currently doing is the staff is analyzing not only internal information that we provided, but as well as, more importantly, what the community provided during that town hall. And then what's going to come out of it at the end is we'll have a future report to the council that we can give, kind of summing up everything that happened and some of the actions that we're planning on taking and some timelines down the road for addressing some of those issues. Looking over the both the internal feedback we got from staff as well as the community, you could really kind of put their reactions into several buckets of or themes of what we were looking at is where their comments went. And what those were was centered around communication, just the clarity of some of the information that went out, how it was received. We also saw people were talking about just the coordination of the regional highway, the impacts of closing I-90 basically, and how that affected the event. Also looks at flood response, just some of the logistics of how it happened that day, as well as traffic management through the city. And then also infrastructure resilience. And then also really important was just how the community preparedness, what they did ahead of time or what we can do in the future to help the community be better prepared for future events. So those were kind of the themes we saw in the comments that we got back from that town hall.
So before we go too far, in your, and I apologize for not being at the town hall, had other conflicts. But I'm really looking for how the decision was made to redirect I-90 down through Snoqualmie, New York's Bend. Then once 202 became impassable, how the decision was made then to restructure that traffic. Because to tell you the truth, it should have been stopped at I-90 instead of coming into town to do a whoop-de-woo and go back out. But what's that coordination and how do we get that improved? Because when we started cycling them just in town, that wasn't fun.
No, sure. That's definitely one of the subjects that we're talking about and some of the things that we brought up as areas that we could improve. Some of that coordination. We'll make sure that some of those comments happen in the internal discussion or with council regarding how those decisions were made, why they were made, whether it was an outside agency or internally. And then, like I said, the coordination of how we can make it work better maybe the next time, unless there was anything else you wanted to add there.
Well, I would add that when the mudslide happened, traffic rediverted almost. So the parkway just filled up. We already had the 202 shut down because of water over. So when the mudslide happened, all that traffic was instantly diverted onto the parkway, people trying to figure out another way to go. So, and then it was backed up. Then it was just a matter of trying to clear all that out, which took hours.
Sure.
Okay,
In relation,
We essentially had nowhere to send that traffic. We didn't.
but we didn't divert them at the interchange to get back on I-90 and go to Seattle.
Those questions will be answered when
Okay,
we
so
talk
I mean,
about it.
the traffic was flowing. I spent a lot of, because I left my wife, wanted to come down here to the church across the street here and see how the flood was going. We tried this way. We tried down by the casino and come that way. Then we came back through Parkway to get home. I had a front row seat for hours on end of this fun and games. And it wasn't till, if at all, till really late that we said, you're not getting off on I-90 here. Go back somewhere where there's a McDonald's and sit it out. But okay.
A lot of those decisions were made externally outside of the city by external agencies, State Patrol, DOT. I think I can say once we got them into the EOC, that's when you started to see some of the changes where we were able to coordinate better with them. And you saw some of the opening up later on in the evening, but that's definitely one of the themes that we're talking about, how that worked, how it didn't work, obviously, and how we can make that better next time.
I was just gonna say what Chief already mentioned is that there was outside sources that weren't communicating with us as well. And unfortunately, Google Maps and some of the other apps that, the truckers and drivers use, aren't necessarily up to date with DOT information, city information, because it was a whole line of semis that was at a standstill down on 202. And so they were just following their Google Maps instead of the I don't want to say the concerns that were being put out over media about, what's closed and what's not closed. So it was a cluster, that. But
Please, if Google Maps can do can suggest traffic flow, but traffic management and direction is our responsibility within the jurisdiction of Snoqualmie.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
Pete, there's a young man in Germany who messed up a town for a whole day with a little toy wagon and about 100 cell phones messing with Google Maps. You can do it. It's fun.
Mhm.
But again, regardless of what map says, traffic management is our responsibility within the city boundaries of Snoqualmie.
Mhm. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, just
Yep.
when you
we
do
have
the
it on- we
report,
have
I
it on
just
the
want to
radar.
throw it in there.
Yep.
I'd like to hear.
So next steps, just to summarize, so we're continuing the internal operational review, which is incorporating the citizen input that we received, looking for identifying those improvement actions that we can take as the city as a whole, internally with staff, and then we're going to provide a report to council when we're done with that to talk about some of the findings and some of the timelines and things that we're working on. Lastly, I just want to kind of close out with just a thank you, of course, to the city staff, all across the departments during the flood event. I think things weren't really smooth in the EOC, and we got done what we needed to our regional partners that helped us out that day. And then also finally, just to the community volunteers and residents. I think that was a huge component, not only during the flood, but also in the days after the recovery. Some of the community organizations, Love Snoqualmie, some of those. That was really a huge component. And, neighbor helping neighbor, and it really points out what makes this a great community and why it's an honor to live and work here is that interaction, I think, was a huge piece of how we came out of this event. Any other questions I can answer tonight regarding what we're doing and where we're going with that?
Mayor?
Yeah, so if I could just point out on this, yeah, and don't forget to talk into the mics. Both of your mics are a little far away, maybe. But anyway, so this picture, not the guy with the mic, ignore him. The other three, I just want to say they ran that event. This is the one picture during the 5 seconds that I spoke to introduce them. This was their show. That was very intentional. I think our community really enjoyed interacting with our directors, having them tell the story of what happened, answer questions, and then listen to the responses. So I think engaging with our community that way, getting our directors directly involved. Yeah, they want to hear from us, the elected leaders, but they want to interact with our staff too. And so this is a fantastic event. And I thought, for that purpose, and I thought it went very well. And I just want to thank the three of them, Director Hamlin, Chief Horaci, and Chief Bailey for doing that. They put, just so that you know, a lot of time in preparing their remarks and then rehearsing that so it would come out well. And they just did a fantastic job. So just want to thank them and make sure you're aware of the effort they put in and how well it was received.
What was next on the agenda?
Me again.
Yeah, we had discussion, King County EMS BLS contract.
Yes. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on some information and agenda bill that will be coming to Public Safety Committee at the next meeting. Just wanted to kind of preload you with some information that you'd be able to think about, but then you are going to see the agenda bill in your next packet for the next meeting. So just for that discussion, since 1979, King County EMS has been funded by voter-approved levies, which occur every 5 years. And you might ask yourself, what is King County EMS? King County EMS is basically the entity that helps support and helps fund advanced life support, which is paramedic service, BLS life support, which is us EMTs in the county, training, community outreach. They do medical control and quality improvement management, data management, research, and a whole ton of other programs in King County. So basically, if it has to do with emergency medical service, it goes through King County EMS. So King County EMS is funded mainly through this levy that they run every 5 years in King County. And they in turn provide, not only does the funding help run King County EMS, but they provide money back to the entities, the fire departments in King County, to help support those actions and help support the funding. So every 5 years, King County EMS puts together a subcommittee to plan for the next levy cycle. These committees look at all areas of King County EMS, focusing on the services delivered and the finances needed to support those functions, as well as how to allocate the funds from the levy for those 5 years. And actually, Councilmember Cotton represented the city on one of the committees and helped provide a voice for the city in these discussions that really came up with how the levy funds were going to be allocated for the next 5 years. So the most recent levy passed in November of 2025, and that's going to cover the years of 26 through 31. And that was a 25 cents per thousand for assessed value. And with this new levy cycle, the contract with King County EMS needs to be redone. So we need to sign a new 5-year contract with them to be able to receive these funds. That contract requires the mayor's signature and subsequently council's approval for him to provide that signature. And that's what we're going to be bringing to the public. I'll be bringing to the Public Safety Committee the next meeting. But I wanted to generally just talk about the funding for the levy, what it does for us. And tonight I'm just kind of using round numbers, but the agenda bill will have the actual amounts in it. You'll be able to see in paper. But tonight, just for the ease of discussion, we're just kind of talking about general numbers, not specifics. So in 2025, Snoqualmie Fire was eligible to receive roughly $263,000 in reimbursable funds through the levy. That was our annual allotment for 2026. Of those 263,000, we actually received about 217 because it included some money from previous years that we had saved up. If you remember the AEDs that we purchased, that money came out of that fund that we had saved up from a couple years. But if you take that carryover money away, in reality, our annual funding for the year was 207,000 out of that 263. That's what we were receiving in reimbursable funds. And that's the point I want to make, is to remember that these funds are not guaranteed, they're reimbursable. So when we spend money on something based on the guidelines of the contract, we can turn around and ask for that money back, but we don't necessarily expend all the money that was allocated to us depending on the programs and things that we're running. So in 2026, what we're going to be getting in funds is going to be 300, or we're going to be available to us is roughly 300,000 in reimbursable funds. And those fall into a couple different buckets. And I just kind of wanted to explain those to you. The first one, and the large portion of the money, goes into our basic allocation, and that's $217,000 for 2026. And that's almost guaranteed money for the city, because we use, one of the things you can use for that basic allocation is salary. Obviously, we spend more than $217,000 in salary, so that's guaranteed money that we're going to get every year, and it increases every year based on inflation. That's guaranteed that we're going to get out of that 300. The other is going to be our core allocation, is what they call, and that's what we use for equipment. That's going to be 7,600. Again, that's what we used on AEDs, and that's what we're going to use in 2026 is to purchase that third AED. So that money is guaranteed we're going to get. So roughly that comes up based on, I wanted to look at, excuse me, let me just back up a minute. So besides those, there's money put aside for the MIH program, which is Mobile Integrated Health. That's about $53,000, and then $20,000 is instructor fees. So that's the bucket that makes up that 300,000. But of that 300,000, based on what I just talked about, the allocation, the basic allocation, and our the core, and then a little bit of MIH, we're going to probably get about $235,000 in reimbursements. We're not going to see that full 300, and that's just because of the programs that we run. We do our MIH, our Mobile Integrated Health, through Redmond. That usually is only about $6,000 to $10,000 a year. That's how much we provide them to give us the service. And then we don't currently have any instructors that teach for King County EMS for that 20,000. So I just wanted to kind of try to clear that up a little bit, that even though the city's allowed to get 300,000, probably, we're only going to be seeking reimbursement for about 235,000, because we just don't use all those MIH funds. We don't need them. And then we're not having anybody teach. So just to kind of sum this up, signing a new contract for these 5 years is a win-win for the city. The requirements the city to receive the funding are things that we're already currently doing. The only new addition to the contract is there's a requirement to provide 6 months of PPE. And that goes back to the pandemic. Back when we had the COVID pandemic, King County EMS basically was a clearinghouse for all that equipment, not only for paying for it, but also having a place to store it. Decided that wasn't the best situation going forward. So that was included in the contract, is that each agency is going to purchase and store 6 months of supplies, not only because they can have it on the, it doesn't take up as much space, but then also it could be rotated through their stock of supplies that we normally use. That way we're not going to run into expiration issues. So that's really the only ask that comes to the city based on the new contract. And that's something I knew about, that I was part of the discussions about, something I've planned on. We have the space for it. And the money to purchase a lot of that PPE is going to come out of the levy funds as we go throughout the year.
I think Councilman Cotton, you have a question?
I do. So part of my understanding from being on the committee was that this levy funding cycle, instead of the funds having to be designated specifically for this, that they could actually be lumped together. So if you didn't use as much of your MIH, you could use it for other purposes. And so I just wanted to make sure that the total amount that's being funded for the department, because I'm not sure what our city policy is about, like if it rotates over to the next year, instead of just going into the general fund, that it can actually, if you, like you said, you want to earmark it for certain special things, that you can do that for future years as well. And also that it's not going to go to Parks and Public Works or other departments when it's specifically earmarked for fire department.
Yeah, of the money that I talked about, for sure the ones that I know that carry over is the core services, the one that's used for equipment. That's how we saved up money to buy those AEDs. The MIH also has carried over in the past. I don't believe the instructor fees do. I haven't seen that. Usually what King County EMS does is they provide a letter to the city every year saying, this is how much you're going to get and these are the rules surrounding it. They haven't provided that yet because the contract hasn't been signed yet. They were a little late in getting the contract out to the agencies. They had some other pieces they had to work on, some legal pieces in the contract. I'm anticipating once the contract is signed, we'll get those rules that we'll talk about. Just like you mentioned, there may be some new rules about some of that. And really where we're looking at is probably that MIH money. There might be some rules around that MIH money that open it up to a little bit more spending than it has in the past. It's been pretty locked down on what we could spend it on before. Hopefully, maybe we've talked about internally, some of the things that it could be used for in the department, not in the department, but for around some of that behavioral health with the police department. It might be able to be redistributed to that. I just haven't seen those, that explanation, if you will, letter yet. Like I said, in the past, it was pretty locked down and we could only use it for the MIH services to Redmond.
It changed.
And then we'll look for a change in that one. Like I said, up until now, we've only used a small portion. I think last year our MIH total was 36,000, something like that. And it had built up over the years. But again, we could only use it just for contracting with either running our own program, which there wasn't enough money to do, or enough calls, to be honest. But so it made sense to contract with Redmond. But again, they used 6,000 to 10,000 of that because they really was just any time they spent on Snoqualmie, they charged us on an hour basis.
Right.
So that will be something I'll look at once I do get that final funding letter, once the contract's signed, is ways that we could possibly use more of that difference between the 235 and the 300. But I did want to point out though too that, and I think I forgot to mention it, is we did see about a 28,000, when you look at the ones that we have spent in the past, we did receive about a $28,000 increase over what we have in the previous years with this new contract. So that is a plus. That's, like I said, last year we got, 207 If you take away that carryover, now we're going to get 235. So we did see a pretty significant increase, and then maybe we'll be able to get some more looking at those MIH funds.
I'll look through my paperwork on that too and see if I can find anything, because I know it was a big point of contention for some departments about kind of being dictated like what it's going to be spent on. And so they wanted to be able to just put it all into their pot and, make sure that it's going to what the department needs are as a whole. So we'll try and make sure that happens.
These are basically reimbursable funds. So you don't get money till you tell King County you either spent or going to spend this dollar figure on this thing, which complies with what they've said this money is for.
Correct.
So at no time is this money available for other things outside of public safety.
Correct. Yeah, once we, like I said, for example, once we purchase the ADs, there's a form I fill out. I sent the purchase order, the invoice to King County, and then they in turn reimburse us the money that we asked for. So yeah, it's money that's reimbursed after the fact.
Right. Okay.
And again, that's going to show up at the actual agenda bill will be at the next council meeting, or excuse me, the next public safety meeting. And then hopefully with your approval, we'd be looking to take that to the full council, I believe, on the last meeting in April, the April 27th meeting.
Cool. Thank you. And next one is summary of current activity around enforcement around school zones.
Yes. Am I close enough? So the first 3 months of this year are going to look very different than the rest of the year because we have officers available now. We haven't had officers available. So our numbers for the first 3 months are very small. But we want you to know that school zones is one thing we're focusing on now that we have essentially have the appropriate staffing. For the first 3 months of the year, the area around the high school, we did roughly 55 traffic stops with 12 citations.
Was that 12 citations?
Yes.
Okay.
And then infractions. And then on the Parkway, it was roughly 228 traffic stops, 66 citations. We had 2 accidents around the high school and 8 accidents on the Parkway. So that's what we had the first.
In the school zone?
It's a little bit hard for us to pull the number and say which ones were in the school zone because she has to pull those numbers out of our system but that was on the Parkway.
So when you say,
They weren't
when you say
necessarily-
8 on the Parkway, that's
That's the whole part.
end to end.
Yes.
Okay. Had me worrying, was 8 the school zone? It's not a big school zone.
Yeah, that's the whole Parkway.
I think that's where we had the lady go up on the guardrail. All right.
Any questions on that, or you want me to move on to cover loads?
No, not for me. Are you okay? Okay.
Covered loads is another area we're focusing on. One thing we did, I probably should have explained this in the school zones. We were able to do a staffing trial for the month of April because we have an officer that came off of light duty and he's basically a limited duty. He can't run or make arrests or anything, but he can do traffic stops. So we decided why not a traffic officer for the month of April and we'll see how it goes. So we'll get you that report down the road, but as far as the 2 things he's focusing on are school zones and covered loads. The covered loads, the state law is not very good. It essentially says that they can heap up dirt and gravel in the middle, but they don't have to cover it as long as it's not spilling out over the sides. So these guys drive down the road and there's still
Coming off the back is okay?
there's still dust and stuff that gets blown out from the wind. So essentially it's not a very good law. So we may have to think about a city ordinance or whatever comes down the road. So what I'm saying is we're not able to stop every vehicle that doesn't have a cover. We can only stop the ones that we see either spilling over the sides, dropping it off the bottom, or dust flying off the truck. That's what we can do a traffic stop. And sometimes if you're seeing them at an intersection or something like that, you're just not seeing them come off the truck. But that's another area that we'll be focusing on.
Are we, can we, and are we considering a load that says a Snoqualmie ordinance says loads must be covered? I mean,
Just
we
put
can't
that on the
be,
to-do list, just
Huh?
now.
okay,
just
yeah,
put
we
that on the
can't be in
to-do list.
contradiction to the state code, but we can be more stringent than the
Right,
state
we
code.
can make more
Yeah.
restrictive, yes.
Thanks, Jim.
And then compression brake enforcement's another area that we're focusing on. It's a little bit, compression brakes are prohibited. That's fine. The problem is some people think they're hearing compression brakes sometimes when they're actually not. They're hearing a vehicle going uphill that's really making a lot of noise. And so part of it is our education of people that we just can't do anything about that. If the vehicle's got a muffler on it, these trucks make a lot of noise going uphill. So that's just a challenge we face, but we are out actively pursuing the compression brakes, and people do use them, and we try to catch them. So I'm not saying it's not a problem. And then the final issue was the school zone beacon in the northbound lane on the parkway near Timber Ridge. Got damaged in the snowstorm, and that's all been repaired. The flashing reader board near Fisher is now operational again, so all of those things are operational.
Oh, so the, on northbound lane, the flashing light was taken out when?
During the snowstorm we had.
Oh,
It
okay.
basically just fell over.
Cause I lost an argument with the wife. All right, now I'm gonna,
And I'll tell you what, people noticed that.
I
next
wasn't,
day-
yeah, I
the
was,
Next day, we were getting calls, they're flying through the school zone, the lights are down.
well, I was driving going, why? Cause it led to the impression that the school zone was, on the north side was a very short school zone after the light. And I'm like, that didn't make any sense. Okay. Peace, thank you, cause now it makes sense. I still won't get my dollar back, but all right. Any other items for discussion tonight?
So the
Mr. Mayor?
question, if I could, Chair, is which of these items might go forward to the council meeting? So obviously the BLS contract is something that the
Oh, yeah.
agenda bill will be coming to you next cycle. If you wanted us to present that, that it's coming, we could. The flood event review update, so number 2 on your agenda, seems like something that the full council might be interested in, but obviously yours to decide. And then I think the rest 4 through 6 are likely for your sort of benefit, but we're happy to present that at the full council. So I guess the request would be number 2 and possibly number 3, but of course it's your decision. So whatever you would like, if any of these to go forward.
Well, and again, number 3 will come forward as agenda bill next time, move that forward, so I don't,
If I
okay.
could, Chair?
Huh?
We're trying to follow a practice now of certainly at the committee level, and then obviously you can decide how much of this, each topic by topic you want at the council level. But the idea is to let you know an agenda bill's coming and what the content is before we shove the agenda bill in front of you, so that if you have concerns, we can try to build those into the agenda bill we do bring you. And also, you're not sort of under the gun to make a decision the first time you've seen something. So certainly that seems relevant at the committee level, but you can make it obviously a judgment as to which of these, if any, need to be also done at the council level.
Sure.
Yeah.
As far as, I think it sounds like, especially since the agenda bill is coming forward on the BLS contract, but item 2, since there really wasn't any new material that was being presented that we haven't seen before, I would think that maybe waiting until there was more information, like in the next steps before taking up time. It sounds like we're a little backed up on our council agendas, so maybe that one can hold for a bit.
Well, I think minimum slide 8 in the package, which shows kind of the steps we're going through, might be worthy of a discussion in council to say, here's where we are coming, and it's coming through. I'm not sure we need to have the in-depth conversation we had here tonight, but just here's the process we're going through, and these are what we've done, and where we're headed. which again is slide 8 with that big arrow going up.
So Chair, if we could, we'll put slide 8, if this is what you're deciding, on the agenda. And then, as you're alluding to, my suspicion is F&A may take some of these items and push them off just to manage workload, but at least you've put that into the queue, so to speak.
And considering the engagement, summary of activity around school zones might not be bad for council. Either the acting chair can mention something, give me the right words, if you don't want to present, but that there is active more engagement. There's been 50 some done by this, down by the high school, 12 citations. Give me those numbers you had, if you would. And just for awareness for the community, I think they'd like to see that we're doing, they raise concern and we're reacting.
Around the high school, it's about 55 stops.
Good.
And,
Do an
So,
email.
so if we could, just get an email
My
and
my
send it to
brain,
'em.
it'll be gone.
Thinking about the April, traffic officer. The officer during the month of April that's going to be doing traffic, dedicated to traffic.
That's a level of detail that I'm not, the fact that we're doing enforcement and everything else, how we're doing it, that's up to us.
Captain Mo, if you could just get that email to me, if the summary, I'll make sure and get it through to the chair.
Okay. Other than that, yeah, the rest of it, I think we'll get. I may come back and have you talk to my wife on the school zone bites just so I can get my dollar back. But other than that, I think the rest of it can hold off. Not that we're competitive at house. Okay. All right. Other items for discussion or future items of note we ought to put on? If not, any objection to adjourning?
None.
All right, I'll consider us adjourned. Thank you.